This is your reminder that the BBC has yet to address the consistent transphobic leanings in its news coverage, and while the team behind Doctor Who is not connected to this in any way since this is a BBC-owned property, I'm going to keep pointing it out until the problem gets resolved. Links in a pinned comment below if you don't know what I'm talking about. I'll stop saying it when it stops being a problem. Is it bad that in trying to come up with an opening gag for this, I just keep thinking of the same quote from Moe from The Simpsons? Heck, I guess I'll go with it. If wishes were horses, I'd be eating wish meat every night. Hey there, folks. We are almost done with the latest season of Doctor Who, and we are at Wishworld. This one's kind of interesting. It's a bit mixed for me, if I'm being honest, because the actual bulk of it, the primary thing that we spend the most time with, I actually like quite a bit, the more I think about it. The rest of it is fine. It's fine. So where do we start? You know what? I think I'll start with the positives on this one. So let's talk about the ins and outs of Wishworld. Because this is a world wished into existence by Conrad from Lucky Day. I will admit to having been slightly skeptical of the idea of bringing back Conrad, partially because I thought they actually really nailed, between the writing and the performance, the kind of person that he is. And I worried about not playing into the character's strength or just having him back for the sake of, oh, we're in trouble. We know we don't like this guy, and not actually doing anything interesting with him. No, this is actually a really good deepening of the understanding of him, and it confirms everything I thought about the guy. So one of the things I pointed out in Lucky Day is that he is a very specific kind of right-leaning, well, I said right-leaning at the time. I'm going to say far-right now. Far-right, hard conservative, conspiracy-style podcaster. And there was a little bit of debate in the comments section of my video about how much he believed what he was doing. Because he must not completely believe that Unit's making everything up. That doesn't quite track. Here's the ultimate thing that you need to remember. It doesn't matter what he believes is or isn't true. What matters is what he wants. And this gives us the exact view of the kind of world he would create if given the power. And as far as I'm concerned, it's completely consistent. Oh, another thing about Lucky Day, some people got it in their heads that the core message of Lucky Day was we should doubt those who have doubts about and try and fight against a government body. And I don't track with that at all, especially because the ultimate criticism of Conrad and his followers wasn't that they were questioning Unit. I mean, a little bit meta-narratively, it's kind of a cheat because we know Unit is legit, because we're the audience here, we have more information. But what it was criticizing was his tactics, was the lengths he was willing to go to, was his cruelty, was the things he wanted. Yeah, I felt like it mapped on pretty well to a certain kind of right-wing influencer that I am more than a little familiar with. And that really feels like it's all been backed up by what happens here, because a guy like this, what he wants, and guys like this don't care how they get it. They honestly don't. They don't care if they have to lie. They don't care who they have to hurt. This is what they want. And what he wants, what he does when given the chance to make the world from scratch for all intents and purposes, is a rigid family hierarchy. Women stay at home, raise children. That is their purpose.
It's all very clear. Good little girl, then good little wife, then good little mother.
The only women we see outside the home are women who either presumably already have fulfilled this purpose or appear to have never gotten married, in which case, well, I suppose we might as well put them to work. The men are very happy to work as part of the machine. Everything is old school, deliberately. They're using rotary phones because this is this twisted, this twisted never was real version of like the 1950s or 60s, because that's the kind of regressive that somebody like Conrad is. And it gets even better when we get to the whole aspect of doubt. Because, yeah, that was never real in the first place. Even if you could make things the way things were in the 50s or 60s, they weren't like this. And the only way you could maintain something like this is forcefully. And obviously there's the force of his wish, but also there's, effectively thought crime. And it has that sense of paranoia. People are afraid of doubting, that they doubt, that people around them doubt. Fear and control like that is the only way you can maintain a thing like this. And I really love that the two Ronnies, not that two Ronnies, but the two Ronnies know this. And in fact, they're counting on it. They know that what Conrad wants, what he would build when given the power to reshape the world, is unsustainable and will fall apart. And they are harnessing the power of it falling apart. I actually really like that. It's a really interesting way that the Ronnies are manipulating him. The way that they aren't trying to help him accomplish anything. They want him to fail. That's part of their plan. And yeah, naturally, a world shaped by somebody like this has literally no place for the outcast, the disabled, the people who don't fit within his well-ordered world. He literally has a blind spot about them. He has no use for them, so they are effectively invisible, and they are the least affected by his wish as a result, because he doesn't even consider them people. Why would he account for them at all? Yeah. This very much shapes the kind of guy that I had the impression of in Lucky Day. And given that some people have pushed back on me in certain respects to how I characterized Conrad, no, I feel pretty vindicated by how he is portrayed and how he's portrayed through the world he wants to create. And I love the detail that when we get him alone with the older of the two Ronnies, he is exhausted. He actually doesn't seem that happy.
Oh, darling, you're worn out.
I haven't been.
Because getting what they want will never make people like this happy. This was something that Star Wars Andor got really well when it would show the inner workings of the Empire. Yes, the Empire holds all the power, but even the people who serve that fascist machine, and even those who work up to the higher echelons within it, they're still miserable. Because it's not designed to uplift anybody, not meaningfully. It uses people to sustain itself. And it's a system that Conrad has created, and now it is using him to sustain itself, and it's draining him. You can tell he's tired. He's getting worn down. He's starting to wonder, is this actually working? Good. What he wants is bad for everyone, including him. That's part of what's really sick about that kind of mindset. So I think basically almost everything that has to do with that element, especially the allegorical aspects of it, and everything from, as I said, the rigid family structure, the harsh crackdown, and even the slight, this thing, no homos, so hard because one man called another beautiful, and he called him beautiful in reference to a woman, implying that this was what a woman would think. But even that, what? Huh?
Was that supposed to mean? No. No, I'm just...
You're a man. How can you find another man beautiful?
It is so harsh and so rigid and so restrictive. That is, yeah. If you have had the misfortune of listening to far-right commentators, that is the world that they seem to want to build. And I think it's captured really, really well. I wanted to start there because that, I do want to put front and center, was really strong material. It felt really well thought out. It felt really well applied. And it just worked. It really worked for me. The rest, it's not bad, but it's not nearly as engaging. For me, at least. There's a couple of instances of recurrent issues. Okay, at this point, if we don't get more seasons, look, we're in a weird place right now where we're getting mixed reports about whether or not there's going to be another season, or if there is, whether or not Disney's going to be involved and when it'll happen. Set all the speculation aside for a minute. But if this is the only season we get with Belinda, what a waste. Like, she was a really interesting character. I liked her right off the bat, partially because of one of the first things she did was push back on the doctor for scanning her without even asking.
You tested my DNA without even asking my permission. God. You're dangerous.
But that fieriness, that ability to push back on him specifically has been dwindling every episode since. To the point that, like, other than a shocked look at seeing what the doctor was doing in Interstellar Song Contest, after seeing him torture a guy, they're yucking it up, laughing their way back to the TARDIS after that. I think about the impact that Donna seeing the doctor just stand there watching the Rachnos' children drown had on her. Donna didn't travel with the doctor initially because that scared her so much. And it has had no impact on Belinda. Or at least it doesn't seem to have, because now we've jumped right into a dream scenario where she doesn't remember who she even is. I felt like there was a lot of opportunity to really build an interesting dynamic, and it just hasn't happened. It hasn't happened because there aren't enough episodes. 8 episodes is still too few. I've said that before, but I'll keep saying it. There aren't enough episodes, but also in addition to that, there really doesn't seem to be much appetite within the writing team to really develop that dynamic. It could have been so much more than it is. And like, again, the performance is fine. She does a good job. She's just not being asked to build on any of the interesting stuff we had from her very early on. So there's that. Poppy. So I had seen, I say seen as if it was an Easter egg. It does get highlighted. But I noticed the kid in Story in the Engine. I didn't realize that was Captain Poppy from Space Babies. And now she's here. I'm curious as to whether they're going to do anything with that. Or whether it's just like a little Easter egg. I think they're going to do something, because I think the doctor says at one point, like, no, she's real. Poppy is real.
I have a daughter! Poppy is real!
He would know. He rescued her. So I am curious if they're going somewhere with that. Also, interesting that her name is Poppy, and we had the Poppy honey thing in the previous episode. I don't know. It is interesting, and like maybe it'll just be a small note. And just an aspect of the thing I already like, but I'd also be curious to see if they do anything more with the fact that she seemed to have the most doubt. I mean, yeah, you could chalk it up to rebellious 2 or 3 year olds, how often she says no, but like she is consistently saying no. And the thing is, as much as indoctrination is a thing, before you're able to properly indoctrinate children, they will reject some nonsense pretty quickly. Just be like, no, we're not doing that. We had the glimpse of Rogue, which was interesting. I'd wondered if they were ever going to circle back onto that. If this is the only bit we ever get from him, that'll also feel like a little bit of a waste. Again, more episodes per season would really help. But it's nice to at least get an acknowledgement from him. And I do like the focus of, tables don't do that. I don't know, something about the simplicity of that I really liked. And, the whole sort of shorthand for doubt making the world start to collapse, being that things fall through the table. Like, I think that works. I think that's solid as a shorthand. I kind of glossed over the wish baby thing, wish god, or whatever it is. Look, it's ridiculous. It's real ridiculous, especially by Doctor Who standards, because it's that kind of mystical folklore kind of thing, the seventh son of the seventh son. Although in this case, the seventh son of the seventh son of the seventh son. I just kind of breezed past it because it's a MacGuffin. Like, this baby is the mechanic through which we get to tell this story. Like, it's just there to facilitate the story that's being told. Instead of the usual technobabble, we have a magic wish baby. It's just accomplishing the same stuff that technobabble usually does. Do I think it's silly? Yeah. Do I really like it? Not especially, but I don't care enough to let it drag down the stuff that works. Because again, it's not the point. It's just there to enable a thing that I did like. I mean, like, ultimately, that's kind of how I came to enjoy at least initially. I'm a little less sure about it now, but how I came to enjoy the bi-generation when it initially happened with the 14th and 15th Doctors, because while I don't super love the idea of bi-generation in and of itself, I really liked what that facilitated and allowed to have happen, which was having a incarnation of the Doctor basically be able to retire. And that was something that I just really loved. And so knowing that the bi-generation facilitated and allowed me to have that, I was more accepting of it than I might be just as a broad concept. And I'm kind of the same way with this baby. I really like the aspects of how this world is built and the commentary that is involved in all that, and what it says about a character like Conrad. And the baby is what allows that to happen. So I'm okay with it. I'm not sure I defend the baby as much as I have in the past defended bi-generation, but like I kind of accept it a little bit on the same principle. The Ronnies are fine. Like there's a certain camp boisterousness to the newest of the two Ronnies. It works. I mean, especially given that the Ronnie when Kate Amara played her was always a bit on the camp side. So like, yeah, that works well enough. We don't get a lot of time with her. There isn't a lot of ability to develop her as a character, which is frustrating because I think back to the other classic villains that Russell T. Davies brought back, especially for finales. I think of the Master and like, look, I don't super love the John Sim Master, especially in his first appearance in Series 3, but there was time put into him. There was time put into his thoughts and his approach to things and his dynamic with the Doctor. And I think similarly of Davros, when he came back at the end of Series 4, we got some time to really dig into his character a little bit. Not a ton. It didn't like stop the story dead to do it, but like I felt like we got to know them a fair bit better than we get to know the Ronnie in this. Like there just isn't a ton there. They haven't really brought that much of her sort of single-minded mad scientist sort of thing into this. I mean, like obviously she's using Conrad in this way, and she clearly has some goal, which is kind of given away by the next time on Doctor Who, if you've seen that. I'm not going to bring it up here. I do know what is said in that next time on Doctor Who thing that's like, it sounds like she's trying to accomplish, and that does kind of align a little bit more with how she tends to be depicted. But, you know, for the purposes of this episode, she's just the villain who's doing the thing. The Mrs. Flood, Ronnie, again, weirdly subservient. I mean, pushes back a little, like puts forward this idea of like, you did sort of spring from my loins. I did kind of like that the newer Ronnie was offended by that, because like, honestly, it's kind of a phrase. So like, yeah, no, I'm okay with her being squicked out by that. But the main thing for the older Ronnie is that she seems to be the one interacting with Conrad, and it's interesting that there's a certain gentleness she has when dealing with him, considering that she knows full well what he's being used for and that what he's trying to do is going to fail. I'm hoping that they're not just going to do the thing where one Ronnie like pivots and tries to stop the other. First of all, it would feel repetitive because we kind of already did that with the Master and Missy at the end of Series 10, and that had a lot more time to develop all that stuff, and also was building off of characters we'd had more time with, those being the Missy and the John Sim incarnation of the Master. If they try and pull something similar here, I think it's going to feel a lot more contrived. So we'll see. What else? Well, I suppose there's the big thing that I've been kind of dancing around. Again, like my brain just goes to quote from somebody else. Stuart, you want to take this one?
Omega! It's Omega!
First of all, it's an interesting pull, because other than the Ronnie, Omega was kind of one of the few remaining like recurrent villains from the classic era that hadn't made an appearance. And Omega is somebody who I've said before should have come back. I have said Omega should have been the villain of Flux. Like, the Flux is antimatter. That's part of Omega's entire deal. But then instead they made a couple of new skull-faced people who... The performances were fine. The actors gave it their all, but like, not a lot there. I have to wonder if part of the reason of bringing in the Ronnie was just to catch the fans on the back foot, because we've already had the big returning classic villain, so you're not expecting another one. Except for me, part of the other reason I'm not expecting another one is because how are you going to have the time to wrap all this up? Stick a pin in that one. We'll come back to it. But Omega. So if you aren't familiar with Classic Who, Omega is actually pretty interesting as a villain, because the entire Time Lord society and like the power that they amassed, what they were able to do, was built on two things. One, regeneration, which at this point is attributed to the Timeless Child. The other, time travel. Now, time travel is attributed to 2 Time Lords, arguably 3, depending on what you feel about some things that were hinted at during the 7th Doctor's era and were expanded on in like some novels and stuff, but I'm not dealing with any of that. We're not dealing with the other today. But 2 Time Lords. Rassilon, who, even if you're only familiar with the modern era, you would know from Timothy Dalton initially having played him and then him showing up again in Hellbent, who was also referenced semi-regularly. Rassilon and Omega, they helped create time travel.
Without me, there would be no time travel. You and our fellow Time Lords would still be locked in your own time.
And that is the basis for all of their power. Like, regeneration allows them to hang on for ages, and probably through having regeneration, having a lot more time to work on stuff is probably how they were able to get to something like time travel. But time travel is the core base of the Time Lord's power. It's in the name for a reason. And when time travel was created, the story that survived was that Omega sacrificed himself to ensure the creation of time travel, and then Rassilon ruled over the Time Lords for a time. And apparently at some point eventually came back. Timey-wiminess. The thing is, Omega didn't die. Omega was lost to another universe, an antimatter universe. He was actually the first villain for the very first multi-doctor story, that being the 3 Doctors back in the 70s. And he not only wants to get back to the universe he was lost from, he has a pretty sizable axe to grind.
All my life I've known of you and honored you as our greatest hero.
A hero? I should have been a god!
But of course, you know, he's been alone so long, and he's got this this need for vengeance that, you know, you can't let him succeed, because, like, no, that's all going to be bad. He did come back during the 5th Doctor's era. I don't super enjoy those stories. Well, I don't super enjoy most of the 5th Doctor's era, but anyway, he did come back. He was recurrent. But again, his history and his background, I think it's more interesting than the Ronnies, first of all, and it does make me worry that, like, we're burning off a more interesting, more substantive villain just at the back end of this thing. I don't know. I guess we'll see how it wraps up, but I guess that means I should circle back onto what I said earlier about how much stuff we have to wrap up in this. Okay, so we have effectively 4 villains to deal with, because I'm going to count the Ronnie as 2. We have 2 incarnations of the Ronnie to deal with, who have not been super fleshed out. Like, a little. There's that little dance moment that she has with the Doctor that's like, okay, that's a little something. It's not much, but it's a little something. But there's the 2 Ronnies that we have to deal with. There's Conrad, who is a legitimate threat to the situation so long as he has that baby, because, you know, he can wish bigger problems to happen. And now we've got Omega. And plus we need to undo the apparent destruction of the frickin' world again. Plus, there's a ton of characters to account for. We have to account for Belinda. We've got Ruby in on this. And I actually do like the use of Ruby in this, especially her connecting with Shirley and with other disabled people and, outcast people. And I like how there is a little bit of connection made to stuff that happened to her before, particularly with 73 Yards. There's sort of an echo of her mother rejecting her. In the case of Wishworld, it's because she expressed doubt. But also her sort of kind of remembering having lived through 2025 before, and it wasn't this, which again, 73 Yards reference. So I like the way Ruby is used here. But that means that you need to account for and do something with Ruby. So we need to do something with Belinda. We need to do something with Ruby. Ideally, we're going to cover what is going on with Poppy and why it's that kid specifically. Although, again, if it is just an Easter egg, maybe we won't. But I think they're going to do more of it than that. Rogue, are we going to circle back on that again? Or is it just going to be a warning that he issues? If it is just a warning, that's also ultimately going to feel like a bit of a waste and a missed opportunity that he never came back or was even really properly attempted to be rescued by the Doctor, so far as we're aware. Omega is going to have to be explained to audiences who don't know who the hell this guy even is. And so, I know that the next episode is scheduled to be longer. It's not the standard 40 minutes, which is good. And it's not impossible for RTD to pull this together. He did use an extended length episode for Journey's End at the end of series 4, but the thing was, for as much stuff as was going on in that episode, the vast majority of it concerned characters we already know and didn't need explanation. Really, the only one who needed explanation was Davros, for the sake of new audiences. Other than that, if they'd been sticking with the show, all these were people the audience knew already. Here, some of these are people we know. We know Belinda. We know Ruby. We kinda, not really, kinda know the Ronnie. We don't know Omega at all. There's a fair bit to cover and a fair bit to undo. Again, it's not impossible. I think it's going to be hard to do in a way that doesn't feel rushed. That having been said, again, I do think Russell usually did a decent job at wrapping up these bigger things. Again, I look to something like Journey's End, which I think is one of the more solid finales. Certainly, if I want to compare it to something like Big Bang, which was the finale to Series 5, Stephen Moffat's first season. And yeah, I don't like Big Bang because it feels like nothing but tying up the narrative knots, because there were a lot to tie up, but in the process of doing that, it doesn't actually tell much of a story. It's just, I just feel like I'm being dragged along as all the loose ends get tied up. Whereas Russell was a bit better about actually getting a narrative in there as well with Journey's End. Although Journey's End did get indulgent on the tail end with it being this long extended farewell tour for the 10th Doctor. I don't know. I'm nervous. And I'm additionally nervous because the main thing that I really liked about this episode is something I don't expect to carry over into the next one, which was all the commentary about Conrad and people like him and what it is they want and how it's unsustainable and what it excludes and how harshly it excludes it and the blind spots of it and the cruelty of it. I liked all that, but there's no reason to carry that over because that world's now literally falling apart so we could bring in a new villain. So even if I put some faith into RTD that he can tie all this up, I'm already a little nervous because everything that's going to carry over is the stuff that I was like, yeah, that's fine. Whereas the stuff that I really liked, there's no reason for that element of the story to really continue very much, if at all. So, I don't know. Again, there is good in this. I do think the commentary going on with the Wishworld itself, what it says about Conrad and people like him, yeah, that's all really good. I thought that was really, really well handled stuff. Oh, and before I forget, bonus points for the subtle jab at Harry Potter with the formatting of this book. I see you, Russell. Nice work. Don't know how the finale's gonna go. We'll see. As the first part of a two-part finale, it is decent. It sets up I would say more than what we need for a finale. But it does set everything up. And it does give me something to point to and go, you know what? In this episode, in and of itself, there's this entire element, and it's, I think, screen time wise, the biggest element of the episode. That's real good. And even if the payoff for everything else isn't great, that is still good. So if you want to compare that to like season 1 with Legend of Ruby Sunday, like they hinged a lot on these answers to questions. And while the cliffhanger on that one was phenomenal, like that episode in and of itself, I was already kind of like, okay, you're just making this massive deal out of this thing. But if the answers aren't good, I'm never going to want to revisit this episode, really. This one, I think I would be interested in revisiting and picking through this, even if the finale we get next week isn't any good. That said, I hope it is. I always hope Doctor Who is good. When it's not, I say so, but I always hope it is. I want it to be good. I love this show, and I want it to be its best self. So, fingers crossed for next week, I guess. Wishworld! What'd you think about this one? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills, enables me to do this as my living, even if you can't help me out that way. Like, share, subscribe. Those all help. Don't worry too much about it, though. What I really want you to remember is that you are beautiful, you are valid, and you are loved. You are the council. I'm just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned. And now to thank my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Quite Bearish, Zubin Lutfula, Mira G, Angry Casperl, Dave Hall, Andre, Movie Turtle, Oliver B, Welsh Wrestling Geeks, Melissa Pedersen, Mary Mello, Becky Sparks, Loki Eris, Pal Barabajoggle, and Sir Didymus is my favorite. And also Toka Blue Hoovian, Auntie Kate 808, and Tracy Scrabbit. If you'd like to hear me try and pronounce your name correctly while these guys chitter in my ears, check out the reward tiers on the Patreon. Yes, I hear you.